Hi, Linda. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited about this conversation. We're talking about time management, especially for music teachers. And to be honest, I was thinking about this before we started talking, that this could not have come at a better time for me personally, because I have so many balls I'm juggling right now that I just sometimes am like, feel like I'm dropping one or more of them. And so just for my own personal selfish reasons, I'm so excited about this. But before we get started, Linda, will you please introduce yourself to the listeners today?
Sure. My name is Linda Kardamis, and I taught middle school math at a school in Ohio before I had my kids. And then once I had my kids, really felt God wanted me to stay home with them. And so in that season of staying home with kids, I ended up writing a book and then starting a website called Teach for the Heart. And so for about last 10 years, actually, we've been supporting educators in a variety of ways. Our focus is practical advice and encouragement for teachers across all grade levels, all subjects. So I'm so excited today to talk about specials and music in particular, because that's something that is so many teachers and you guys all listening are dealing with and sometimes don't get as much specificity. So this is so exciting to be talking about this today.
Yeah, for sure. I have heard about your business and I love it. It's awesome. And I've gotten to do my own digging around in there and researching it. So that's awesome that you started a business. I know firsthand what that's like to go from the classroom and then have kiddos and then feeling this itch to still want to do something in the education world. And I felt called to help teachers. And that's exactly my story too. It's so funny. So like we think when we're graduating, I've been asked this so many times, and I'm sure you have as well, of like, did you always know you wanted to own a business? And I'm like, no, I got an education degree because I thought I would be in the classroom for 30 years. And it's just funny how our stories can change, isn't it?
It is. I do remember as a young person thinking you pick your career and that's what you do for your whole life. And that's actually not, it can happen, but often there's a lot more twists and turns along the way. And I mean, I always said I would hate to be a business owner. I would hate to be an entrepreneur. I did not plan. I did not plan this at all. It just, I believe God just led me in this way. But yeah, no, it's cool to just see, and you never know what's around that next turn, and it's been a joy. So.
Yeah. So you are a mom and a business owner, and you've been in the teaching world, and so you probably even personally have maybe I don't know, struggled, and maybe if it wasn't a struggle for you, you know what it's like to have a lot of different areas of your life to manage. And so when it comes to time management, specifically for elementary music teachers or any teacher for that matter, what are some tips and tricks you have around this area?
Oh, there's so many practical things that I can say. But before I kind of get into the practical, I think there's a key mindset shift that is really important. And that is recognizing that we can't do everything. And I mean, we all know that, obviously, and we can't do everything, duh. But I think sometimes we choose to ignore that reality when we, choose our obligations and what we're going to do. And when we sit down to make our to-do list, I know way too often I've put way more on there than I could ever get done in a week. Why do we do this? So we tend to overestimate how much time we have, how much we can actually get done. And we just kind of ignore that reality that we're finite. So I do think that's a really important realization to make, because when we're choosing whether or not to do something, oftentimes we think of it as a yes or no. Should I do this? Yes or no? And we almost always want to say yes. But the reality is that we're not actually choosing yes or no to specific things. We're really just choosing either or. If I'm spending my time on this, I'm not spending it on something else. And that doesn't mean I should always say no. Maybe, this thing might be the very best use of my time. I might have just been, sitting on the couch doing nothing, but I might need that rest. So anyhow, it's all either or. And so I think it's really key to recognize I only have so much time. I only have so much mental energy. I only have so much focus. It's limited. And so when I am looking at my to-do list, when I'm deciding whether or not to do an obligation, and specifically in music, when I'm deciding how complex the core, the program is going to be, or how complicated these lessons are going to be, I need to be realistic in recognizing when I'm choosing to bite off something big, I'm choosing not to do something else. And is this the choice I want to make? So I think that's really a key mindset shift to actually embrace And then that helps with some of the practicals, which I can get into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny because I have a course that it's about curriculum design. And I actually said that on the Facebook Live last week. Not the exact thing, but something similar where a teacher was asking me, there's so many different songs out there. And so for any subject area, there's so many lessons you could use. There's so many materials and resources and activities. But I said that phrase to her. I said, when you say yes to something, maybe it's a song, you're saying no to other songs. And that's not bad. And a lot of the overwhelm I know for music teachers comes from having all of these things you could implement, but you can't. And so sometimes it gets stressful not knowing, am I doing it the right way? Or should I be doing it that way? Or should I use that song instead of this one? And I know it's conversations I have over and over and over again. And I know thinking about my own teaching journey, I get it. It's overwhelming trying to figure out what am I doing? And am I doing it right? And so I love that you spoke to that because it's so true, whether it's lesson planning or in our own personal lives, that it is about decisions. It's, if your administrator asks you to do a certain task, I mean, you got to be respectful about it, but you don't have to always say yes. Or I had a teacher last week ask me to do something for her. And I was like, not right now because I was in the middle of doing a task, but I said, I'll check in with you in a little bit. And old Jessica used to be like, right away, sure. Yes, let me do that. I got to email that person back right now. And when I got to the point of it doesn't have to be right away, but it can wait. Like I went all weekend not answering my emails or texts. And I don't always do that, but I had someone that emailed me 3 times. Are you getting my email? And I made the decision to just not answer. So anyways, that was kind of all over the place, but just some thoughts that came to my mind when you were talking about that.
Yeah, no, and you're so right. There's intentionality is a word I really like when it comes to time, because a lot of times we just let time happen to us. And the more intentional we can be with it, the more we do the things that we actually are important, the less stress we feel because we've made a choice and we just are sticking to it. And the more balance we can create because we're being intentional with it. So I think that's really key.
You had talked about some practical tips that you could share around time management. I would love to hear what those are.
Yes. Okay. The first one is going to be the least practical of them, but it's going to become very practical. So the first one is actually spend a little bit of time thinking about what matters to you. And this applies both to what you were saying in the curriculum and then both just as a teacher and then at home. So just thinking about what actually matters when I'm in the classroom or when I'm preparing, what kinds of tasks that I do actually move the needle? Is it lesson prep? Is it choral practice? What kinds of things are like, yes, that is, I love it and it makes a difference. And I don't want to skip that. And then think about that at home too, because believe it or not, sometimes the things that actually light us up and the things that actually matter sometimes those aren't as urgent. Yeah. And so sometimes those can actually get forgotten. And so I think it's really important to identify what are the things that I really want to do and kind of get clear on that, because then we can schedule them in first. Mm-hmm. And so then I'll talk about 2 scheduling things. One scheduling thing I think is really, really helpful is to plan your work hours ahead of the time each week. And some people talk about an ideal week and they're like, have a schedule that's your ideal week. But I don't know about you. Teaching, it changes from week to week. And especially, in music, if you have a big event, that week is going to be crazy. You're going to be working extra hours, and there's just ebbs and flows. So I like to plan it each week to just look at my week, say, what do I have this week? And just plan what time am I arriving at school? What time am I leaving? And then do I need any blocks outside of that? And so we actually have a planner. We have a little chart for this on each week, but I mean, you can just jot it down anywhere and just think about that. How long late do I need to stay? And this should be realistic. If you're currently working 50 hours, don't suddenly only plan 40. You're not going to be able to just cut that off that quickly.
Right.
But so be realistic. But even if you are having the same number of hours, you are going to have immediately so much more balance, so much more clarity, and you're going to get a lot more done just by planning your hours. And you're going to find that you're able to diminish them if that's one of your goals. Because this does a few things. Number one, it just provides boundaries. Because if you're just going to stay until you're done, you're never going to be done. There's always something else you can do. So giving that hard boundary is really helpful. It helps you recognize school is very important, but so is home. Or even if you don't have a family, like my personal priorities and my rest and my refreshment, it gives you that time. And so then you don't have to feel guilty for working until the time because that's what you decided. And then you don't have to feel guilty for leaving because that now it's time for that. So it helps create that boundary. And then you are totally free in that to plan time at home. So if you're like, man, I'm really behind and I really want to do, or I really want to, I'm looking forward to like sampling some music and figuring out what I want to do and doing a deep dive in that. Okay, Saturday morning, 9 to 11, that's what I'm going to do. And you put it on your calendar and it's planned. And that, once again, is so helpful if you have a family and just communicating with that. They know when you're starting. They know when you're going to be done. It also helps relieve some of your stress because you know, okay, I have time for that. I'm not, you know how that's when you're just like, I got to do this sometime. I don't know when I'm going to do it. No, I'm going to do it Saturday, 9 to 11, Thursday, 7 to 9, whatever it is. And then the final benefit, well, there's more benefits than this, but one other benefit I'll mention is that having a time limit helps us focus. If we sit down and we're like, I'm working till I'm done, our mind can really be unfocused. But if we say, I got 2 hours and I got to get, X task done in this time, it does really help us typically stay focused and actually get it done in the more reasonable amount of time. Mm-hmm. So there's that. Yeah. I have one other scheduling thing, but I don't know if you have any thoughts on that first.
Yeah, well, yeah. And then I do want to hear that. I was just going to say, I am a very type A personality. I am always been a calendar, organize things like you've been saying, time blocking, all the things. And meeting teachers I've worked with, I'm realizing not everyone is, they're not like me. But, and that's good to see. But I do know that a calendar and time blocking is so beneficial for anyone. And like the systems will look a little bit different for each person, and I tell teachers too, like, yours doesn't have to look fancy. You may be a paper planner type of person where I'm more Google Calendar. It doesn't matter, right? Like the system you use, as long as you and it will take time. You've already mentioned that as well, but just starting, maybe like look at 1 week at a time. What can I do this week to block off time to work on certain tasks? And also I love that you said, and also look at times I want to rest and do no work. I think that's so important too. And it sounds silly. Used to me to sound silly to like, oh, I got to block off time to not work. But I know myself and I'll just keep going like a freight train. And I have to literally, like, tonight's that night for me. I had a super busy weekend. And so we're recording this on a Monday. And I said, tonight it is family night. We're doing nothing. We're staying home and there's no plans. My boys actually don't have any activities for the first time forever. And I'm so excited about it. It's like, I feel it's like my soul and body are telling me you need a break, take a night off. So those are just some thoughts. Yeah, like type A, B personalities and different personalities like when it comes to scheduling and stuff like that.
Yeah, and absolutely. And it's funny too, just trying different systems. I'm totally for that. If sometimes something will work for a season, then it's like, this isn't working as well as I thought. I actually just switched my time management system. So I'm going to share you my old system and my new. Right now, I'm a big fan of the new, but the old one really served me well for a long time. So they're just different. This is just a to-do list system. So my old system, what I would do is I would actually write down my list for the week. So I'd put everything that I wanted to accomplish in the week. And then each day I would look and just kind of pick out which things were most important that day. So I do recommend trying to pick out like your one most important thing for the day. And then a couple other things. So I would have my weekly, I would plan that like, Saturday or Sunday, be like, okay, here's the week. And then each day I just pick out a few things. So like I said, that worked with me for a while, but at some point I felt like I was always putting more on there than I could do. So it was kind of getting frustrating. And at some point it was just kind of becoming demotivating. So what I just switched to recently is I've been actually, and this sounds a little bit like what you do, I've actually been estimating how long I think things are going to take me. So I'll put put a 30-minute, 10-minute, 40 minutes next to stuff. And some of that is, I think, I have to finish this task. It's going to take me this long. Other things are just me putting a limit on it. Like this is a kind of an indefinite project. I'm only going to spend an hour on it. I'll pick it up next week type thing. So I've been doing that. And then I've actually just been scheduling out the whole week. And I don't do it like, I don't say 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, but I do say I have about 3 hours on this day. Let me flex, let me put in no more than 3 hours worth of tasks. And I've also been trying to leave a little space. So I've been trying to realize stuff's going to take longer. I'm going to need to check my email. Like, someone's going to want to come talk to me. So actually, as a result, I've been having a lot more realistic lists. I've actually been getting all this stuff done. which is exciting because that feels good. But the other thing that's good about that is it's not that I don't even know. I'm not sure if I'm getting more done or not. I'm not sure. I think I might be because I'm super motivated to get it done. Like when I see this list and I'm like, I can actually do this, then I am like, okay, I got to do it. Like it's super motivating. So I think I probably am getting a little bit more done. But the best thing about it though, is I'm getting the right things done, because when I make my list, I sit down and I'm forced to say, I don't have time for everything I want to do. Some stuff is going to have to get skipped or some stuff is going to have to wait. But once again, I'm making that choice intentionally instead of just, how the week goes,
Right.
I didn't get to it, so that's helpful.
Yeah. So one thought that came to my mind is when you're saying you put things that are the most important each day towards the top, how do you determine what needs to get done those days versus what could wait, like, push it to the next week, maybe for example?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. And I think it's just going to be so personalized to you, to each person. But one of those things is those things that I identified when I talked about before, what really matters. And those things that sometimes get pushed. So, for example, if you're a music teacher and you're like, picking songs is so important. Like, I want to have the best songs. Like, I gotta do that. Or maybe it's simply lesson planning, planning my lessons, or maybe it's preparing for private lessons, whatever it is that you're like, this is what's really important. I have a couple blocks in my week where I'm like, that goes there. It goes in my prime spot. It's really good. And if you think about your day and how it's structured and how you might have a little planning period here, a little time after school here, I'd encourage you to ask yourself, which of those are like the one that's like, okay, I can actually get something done. Like I have some focus. I'm not burnt out. And that's where you'd want to put like your most important things, the things that might take the most creative energy and be like, I really want to get done. And then the stuff like email and like all the little things can kind of fill in later. And that actually brings me to slightly off topic, but relates here with everything else. I've actually just talked into this. I don't know if any of you guys follow Dave Stewart. He has so much great stuff about motivation. And he used this term and I really liked it. It matched what I was saying, but I liked how he said it. He says, I identify the things that really matter. And he had a few for him. He's a history teacher. And then he said, everything else, I suffice it. And what he means by that is I do just enough to be sufficient. So I do it. It is sufficient, but I don't do any more, any more than I need to. And I think that goes back to what we were saying in the beginning, where we literally only have so much time. And I think sometimes as teachers, especially if you do have that type A personality where you're like, I am amazing at everything. I want to do everything so good. And just recognizing that there's certain things that you don't need to do so great at. Yeah. They just need to get done. Like, for example, there was this report when I was in school, like a data report on like how much time we spent. I forget what it was called. It had this name, you had to record all your meetings. Yeah. And there was one teacher that would like record it all for us and we would just copy it. Like, and she was great at that. I'm so glad she spent the time on it. But, I was just like, this is not an area I need to be excellent in. This teacher has offered to give me the data. It's the same. We do the same thing. And I have an idea and I can just fill this out real quick. That's all that's needed for this. This does not need my excellence. This does not need any more of my time than that. So being on the lookout, and it's so personalized. Maybe find another music teacher, buddy up, talk to them, and be always on the lookout for things where it's like, and ask yourself, does this matter if this is done well? Right. And that can be so counter because we're always like, do things well. And yes, but you have to like zoom out doing well. Okay. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, because we want to do our job really well. And if we try to do every little thing perfectly, sometimes it means we're actually doing our job not as well because we wasted times on things that actually don't really matter. So that might be another mindset shift some of you need to make. So whether you've made it or not, and once you're there, though, then you can start really looking out. Are there things I'm doing that I could just stop doing that I don't need to do? Are there things that I can cut back on? If you have a bulletin board, can you do it half as often? Is it going to hurt anything if you've changed that out half as often as you do? So look around and say, can I do that half as often? Would that matter? And some things you'll be like, yeah, that would matter. Okay, good. Keep doing it. Other things would be like, no one would care. And you have to stop worrying about too, like, is it, well, I've always done it that way. I'll care. Well, but does it matter? So
right. Yeah, that makes total sense. I'm laughing because I recorded a solo episode that's coming out in a couple weeks, but it's about being a minimalist music teacher. And what I meant by that is like, it's not in the same term. And I phrased it, and it's not like, when you're living in a house. And the reason I wanted to record that is because my story starts out with, I didn't have anything in my classroom at all and no budget. And so I was kind of forced to just get in there and actually teach music and not worry about the actual stuff. And I know on the flip side, if you walk into a classroom with whatever subject area you teach and you have a lot of things, sometimes you get so overwhelmed by the bulletin boards and all the nice books you have and whatever else is in there that I just wanted to kind of bring it back to, it is about teaching and it's about the students. Whatever, you have in there is great. It's an added bonus. And of course, but that's what made me think of that. Like when you were talking about bulletin boards, I laughed because I think I changed mine twice in the entire year. Because first of all, I didn't have any bulletin board things. And second of all, well, let's just be honest, I didn't know what I was doing at first. And third of all, I just didn't care as much as some other teachers. I love seeing these teachers that are super crafty and can, draw out art on a poster board and cut it out or whatever. I'm not that way. I'm identifying myself. No, I'm not artsy. But like you said, I was focused on teaching and how can I develop curriculum that meets these students where they're at and things like that. But I also love that you said what's important to someone won't be important to someone else and vice versa. And that's okay because we're all different people. So when you were also talking about one thing I do, and tell me your opinion about this. I'm serious. I want to know. I've started doing it, of course, on my calendar, blocking times off. But I've also started doing a daily agenda. But honestly, okay, so my schedule, I work from home Mondays and Wednesdays, and I work in my business, and I work for a couple other businesses, helping them with different things. But then Tuesday, Thursday are my teaching days. I teach part-time at a private school. And Friday, I'm the ed tech specialist at the school, and I also do some teacher training. So it is a lot, but people are always like, how do you do it all? Well, because of that, because I literally just on a Google Doc will say Monday through Friday, and I put down what makes sense for me to do from home. These are the non-school day tasks. And then these are everything else. And then especially Fridays, my ed tech days. I remember when I first started, I was like, there's so much to do. I would just sit there and feel stuck. Like, where do I start? But you said something and I felt like I was the only one that nerded out about this. So you and I are like two peas in a pod here because I started doing that. This task may take me 30 minutes. This one may take me an hour. And of course, it's a prediction sometimes. This will probably take 2 hours because it's a big chunk of a project. Okay, lunchtime. What's going to happen after that? But then when I would get to the end of the list and notice maybe I had a couple things left, but they were at the bottom for a reason, I remember my stress level would go, oh, well, that's okay. I can just bump it down to next Friday when I have time. Anyways, that's the way my brain started doing it. And it has helped me. I didn't think it would help me as much as it has, but it's helped me so much to just have it there and be able to move pieces around. Yeah. Anyways.
Yes. No, that sounds very similar to what I've been doing lately. And I found it super helpful too. And I even put for some stuff, if time. So then I'm like, I don't have to feel bad if I don't get to those. It says if time. But I do think that, and what you said, I think there was key too, is how you prioritize those things on it. If you put the more important stuff at the top of the day and you put the less important stuff at the bottom, then it's okay if that stuff gets bumped. And I highly recommend that to everybody. And also, if, the most important stuff typically earlier in the day, I mean, it depends how your schedule is scheduled, but you have a little bit more energy, a little bit more focus. And by the end of the day, it's like, I'm kind of done, but maybe I can do these, these things. Mm-hmm. So yeah, no, I think that's great. I think it's worth, for those of you that are listening, if you're like, what I'm doing isn't working, then that might be something to try. Try it as an experiment and see if you like it.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, whether it's doing plan time before school, after school for teachers, I know I felt that way too. I'm going to go in early today. And then by the time I realized it, I had my first class waiting at my door. And I was like, I don't even think I got anything done because I'd get distracted by this pile of papers. And then I was like, oh, let me email all these people back. Wish that could have waited. And then by the time I had really thought about doing this certain task when I came in, I was out of time. So I really, for a teacher, I think that would help tremendously.
Absolutely. Yeah. And especially with stuff that like all those little things that distract you, like just kind of, I know what I do with that is I'll choose like, this is a block for all the little things to caught up on all the little things, and this is a focus. So I kind of have like focused times. Like this is a deep, important work time. This is all the little things time. And that kind of helps me try not to get distracted by the little things when I'm supposed to be focusing. So
yeah, I love that too, because I can be deep into work and then get distracted by a text message. And then I notice I derail and I will literally sometimes stare at my screen and go, where was I? So I think that's so good that you set that block, even time off for the little task. Oh my gosh, that's something I'm implementing definitely today. So a teacher listening and they say, okay, this sounds great, but there's only 24 hours in a day. I wish I had 25 hours in a day. I know just alone of what we've talked about would help tremendously. But do you have anything else to say to those teachers that are like, I just need more hours? What do I do?
Yeah, just a great question. And once again, I recommend talking to other people if you either if you can find another music teacher or just maybe other specials teachers at your school. If you're you're probably maybe the only music teacher at your school or one other. And just kind of ask them how they handle stuff, because that can be really helpful to get ideas, especially if you see one that you're like, seems like they kind of are staying crazy late all the time. Right. Because really, and maybe it's something specifically to ask them is looking at your schedule and being like, what is taking me a lot of time? And then asking them like, do you do this? Does this take you this long? Mm-hmm. Because I do think it's key to always be looking for, is there a faster way to do this? Do I need to be doing this? And we kind of already talked a little bit about that. I'm trying to think if there's anything like specifically music related. There's not a ton of great. I guess it depends how you structure your class. Music can be so varied depending on what you do and how you do it. But just kind of looking at what's taking me time. Is that something that the students could help with? If you're taking forever cleaning up the classroom after the students leave, can you end class 2 minutes early and teach the kids to put the chairs back? So like just kind of saying like, what is taking me? Can I get the kids to help with this? Or, so is there someone that can help? Do I need to be doing this? Could I do it less often? So those questions, can someone else help?
Yeah.
Do I need to be doing this at all? Can I do it less often? Or is there just a faster way? And it might sound dumb to just be like, is there a faster way? You might be like, well, if I knew there was a faster way, I'd be doing it. But asking yourself that question, like a big key is asking yourself the right question. So if you say, like, I would do that all the time when I was teaching and I'd still do it. And I would be like, okay, this is taking long. There's got to be a better way. Like, how could I do this more quickly? How could I do this more efficiently? Like, is there, and sometimes those are like inventive things. Sometimes it's like, I'm not literally doing the exact task. It's like, well, what's my goal behind this? Well, I'm trying to teach kids the scales and I'm doing it this complicated way. Well, is there an easier way to do this? Mm-hmm. What would it look like if this were easy?
Yeah.
Oh, and then your mind starts being like, well, maybe I could do this. Or what about this? Oh, what about this? So even if don't discount that question, ask yourself it often. Is there an easier way to do this? Can I accomplish the same goal with it taking less time? And see what your mind comes up with.
Love that. I've talked to teachers before. I love to keep a brain dump, another Google Doc where I just dump ideas down. And so that is something that I think would be something to put on there. That would be a good idea is like, let's say lesson planning. I know when you're talking, I'm thinking about, because music teachers a lot of times plan for K-5 or K-6. And sometimes that can take a long time. And so there are, and I've talked about it on this podcast a lot, but there are a lot of ways to simplify the lesson planning process. But sometimes it can just take a while to figure that out. But I know for me, when I'm hearing different pieces of advice, whether it's a podcast or maybe a course I've taken or a book I've read or whatever else, I like to jot those ideas down so I can go back when I have time to look at those and that, and then of course the implementing it part. But I don't know. What do you think about that idea? Like kind of just having a place to put the ideas down.
Oh, yeah, I think that's great. And yeah, especially because music is such a creative field where sometimes you might be like, I'm blank. What am I doing? And then you have that document to go back and be like, oh, yeah, here's all these ideas. I think that's always, I love that idea. I think that's super helpful. Yeah, for sure.
We've talked about how elementary music teachers are stressed because there's a lot on their plates. And we've also talked a ton about time management and designing better systems. And do you have anything else to add to this for helping teachers with stress management?
Oh my goodness. I mean, can I say, first of all, we do have a free training where we kind of go into some of this in more detail. So I would kind of recommend that. It's at teachfortheheart.com/save time. So it's called 5 time saving practices to stop feeling stressed and overwhelmed. So we have some more tips there. And I'm trying to think if there's any other good tips in there that I didn't get to. Yeah, we go in with that one. We kind of like outline a system of steps, that you can take, which can be really helpful as you're thinking about it. But yeah, because it starts with scheduling, prioritizing what matters, kind of reducing everything else, and then organizing how you do your to-dos, and then delegating. Delegating is one thing that I think is minimized in teaching because we like to have it just so, and we feel like no one else can do it. So I will take one time and give you a tip for delegating. And you might say, I don't even have a pair. I don't have anyone to delegate to. You can delegate to students. You might be able to delegate to parent volunteers. You never know. But even if it's just your students, one of the keys in delegating is identifying things that are repetitive. One of the reasons we don't delegate is because we're like, it'll take me longer to explain it to someone else than just do it myself. And that's true. For anything except the most basic of tasks, that's true. But that also keeps us stuck. So what we need to do is identify tasks that happen over and over every week, every month, every day, and think who can help with that, and then invest the time to train somebody. And the key is yes, it is taking you longer to teach them than do it yourself, but that's time 1. By time 2, by time 3, now they're getting it. And now they don't need you. And now you're saving that time for the rest of the year. So if you've always kind of shied away from getting people to help you, I would kind of open up your mind a little bit to that. And if it's students, you're obviously practicing with them a lot in real time. If you do have a paraprofessional or an older student that can be a teacher's aide for you or something like that, I recommend making videos of whatever you want them to do. So just, have them grab an iPhone and just video you doing it and talking it through. And that way they can reference those instructions as opposed to like taking the time to write out a ton of instructions and all the details. That can be like a really quick way to train someone. So,
ooh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I think that's fantastic. Absolutely. So we have talked about so much. Is there maybe anything we haven't talked about or you want to expand upon from this conversation?
Oh, I think it's about enough for one conversation. So hopefully that's helpful for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we go, let everybody know where they can connect with you online.
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is called Teach for the Heart. That's teach the number 4, theheart.com. At the time, the spelled out URL was not available. So we did teach the number 4, theheart.com. So that's our website there. That free training I mentioned is right there available on the homepage. And then, of course, we're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, same thing, Teach for the Heart.
Perfect. Oh, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I've loved this conversation. Yeah.